I was walking past my friend's car after a night of evangelism. He was in the driver's seat sharing his testimony with some people. Former gang member, did time, God got a hold of him. Now he's out walking with Jesus, telling his story to whoever will listen. But I had already passed him, right? What he was saying though was so vivid that I stopped, turned around, walked back, and I said, "Bro, you need to write a book." He laughed and said, "God willing." I said, "No, you are going to write a book." And then 90 minutes at Denny's, 1 month later, transcript done. 3 weeks after that, book published. And as of this video recording, we've moved over 2,000 copies. God is moving in a tremendous way, but my friend never expected it. And here's the part most people miss. I wasn't finding my calling that night. I was already walking in it. The book was just where my calling met somebody else's need. If you're a high achieving Christian and you've been waiting for a calling moment to feel certain before you act, well, the moment you're waiting for already came, probably more than once. You didn't recognize it because it didn't come like a calling, it looked like an interruption. That's the certainty lie at work. It's forcing you to wait from a misguided premise. The belief that says, when God really wants me to move, I'll know for sure first. It sounds good and it sounds like wisdom, but it's actually the most dangerous thing a Christian leader can believe in or buy in. Now, let me show you what's really happening underneath it all. From the inside, the waiting that you're performing, that you're doing, it feels like a holding pattern. You're standing still while everyone else seems to be moving forward. You're praying, you're journaling, you're doing all the spiritual things that you're supposed to be doing, but the engine never turns over. And I will explain why. So pay very close attention. You're not waiting for your calling, you're waiting for certainty. And certainty is the one thing God almost never gives you in advance. This is why I call it the certainty lie. It dresses up as faithful waiting. It sounds like patience. It even quotes scripture. Be still and know. Wait on the Lord. Trust his timing. But when you pull back the curtain, you see it's not patience. It's paralysis. Just with the Bible verse on it. Moving forward, I need you to take notes, okay? Because what I'm going to share are 3 versions of this lie that I see in a lot of high achieving Christians, including me. Version number 1, the performer. You're already doing meaningful work, you're producing fruit, but there's a low hum, a buzz in the background that whispers, this isn't it. You ignore it because you're successful, yet it doesn't go away. That's version number 1. It also looks like version number 2. The planner. You've researched your calling diligently, you've taken the assessments, you've journaled, you've made a list, but you haven't moved yet because the analysis feels so much safer than you taking action. Sound familiar? Here's version number 3 of what that looks like. A pious waiter. And this is one of the most dangerous because it sounds like spirituality. I'm waiting on God. I want to make sure it's him and not me. Sometimes that's wisdom. A lot of time though, it's fear just wearing a Christian costume. Okay? So here's how you know if you are one of these people that's influenced by one of these ways. You feel restless, even though you're blessed. You compare yourself to people who seem to have it figured out. You make plans, you set goals, build vision boards, but the actual next step, you don't even take it. And deep down inside, you know there's a small move you can make right now that you're not making. That is the certainty lie. And I've lived under it longer than I want to admit. So I am experienced and can talk, speak, encourage you through this. If I were to dig deeper, here's how I think about it. Because the truth is, me and you, the high achieving Christian, we're not lazy. We don't have a motivation problem. We have something much more subtle that we're dealing with. Now, these are the three sources that can serve as a catalyst to the certainty lie, which will help inform as we do our due diligence, right? So number one is the achievement culture. You were trained from a young age that the people who succeed are the people who plan, prepare, and execute with precision. You don't move until you're ready. You don't speak until you know. You don't act until the spreadsheet checks out. That obviously works in business, but it doesn't necessarily work for a calling, because a calling doesn't show up in a spreadsheet. A calling shows up when you act, when you move, take action. Second contributing factor is the Christian culture. Somewhere along the way, we adopted this idea that hearing from God is supposed to feel like a clear, certain, unmistakable signal. The burning bush, the audible voice, open sky, and listen, sometimes God does that, but most of the time he's quieter. He gives you a nudge, a whisper, a weird thought that won't leave you alone, and we might dismiss those because they don't feel spiritual enough. We're waiting under a thunderclap from God so that we can hear him, when it's actually just a small little whisper that he speaks through. Third contributing factor to the certainty lie is identity protection. This is the deepest one. If you don't try, you can't fail. If you don't move, no one can tell you that you got it wrong. So you stay in the planning room, you stay in the research phase, you stay in I'm just praying about it for years. Listen, I was that guy for longer than I'm proud of. Embarrassed, actually. And I had to learn the hard way. Your calling is not a destination that you discover. Your calling is a path that gets revealed as you take action and walk. Abraham didn't get an address on where to go. He just got a go to a land I will show you. Future tense. The land got revealed when he started walking. You see that? That's not a mistake. That's not a bug. That's done by design. But you know, what's interesting is these things, right? There's 4 issues that creep in when you kind of are naturally leaning towards buying into the certainty lie, right? And I want you to be aware of them so that you can smack yourself silly when they do creep up. Issue number 1, you stay where you're competent instead of going where you're called. This is the most common one for us high achievers. You're good at what you do. You make money, you get promoted. People say nice things about you, and every year the gap between what you're good at and what you're meant for gets a little wider, until one day you wake up and you're 42 and you realize you built a kingdom that actually doesn't feel like yours. Okay? Let that sink in. Issue number 2. Those years compound. Waiting feels like a small choice in any given week. I'll figure it out next week is what we tell ourselves sometimes. But weeks become years, and years become a decade. And you don't lose your calling in one big moment. You lose it in 15 minutes at a time over years, while you wait for clarity that isn't coming. Let that sink in. Goodness. Issue number 3. The people who needed you never get found. This is the one nobody talks about. And it's the one that broke me when I figured it out. When I told my friend he was going to write a book, I wasn't acting on certainty. I was acting on a calling I already had been walking in for years. But here's what would have happened if I hesitated. History doesn't get told. The 2,000 people who read it and had their lives moved, they wouldn't get touched by God. And the next person God puts in front of me who needs a champion, well, I'm not ready because I didn't say yes the first time. You see, your calling has a name, or maybe 100 names. there are people whose lives are supposed to interact and intersect and engage with yours. They won't get to what God has for them through anyone else but you. But when you wait, they wait. And some of them stop waiting. Issue number 4. This is the deepest problem. You start to confuse certainty for calling. You assume that if you don't feel sure, it must not be from God. So you only move on the things that feel safe and obvious. And you slowly build a life that's full of certainty, yet empty of the calling. The two are not the same, people. They were never the same thing. I repeat, the two, certainty and calling, are not the same. Certainty will never be your calling, because God, who calls you, almost never gives you certainty in advance. Hear me out. God almost never gives you certainty in advance. Now, let me take you to the scriptures, because it's not subtle about this fact. The people God actually called were almost never given the full picture before they had to move. God reveals calling through obedience, not certainty, unfortunately. Right? Let's look at Abraham. God says, leave your country, your people, your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. Not the land I am showing you, future tense. Abraham had to pack. He had to load the caravan. He had to walk. And only as he walked did the destination reveal itself. If Abraham said, Lord, I need to see the map first, he never would have gone. And the entire story of God's people would have been different. Look very different. Now let's take a look at our buddy. Another case study is Peter. Peter, right? Jesus is walking on water. Peter, in his beautiful, impulsive faith, says, if it's you, call me out, Jesus. Jesus says, come. Did Peter have any idea how he was going to walk on water? No. Did he understand the physics of it? No. He just got out the boat. And here's the thing. He started to sink. He doubted. He failed. But Jesus didn't say, go back into the boat. Nah, he grabbed him and saved him. The failure wasn't the end. The act was the calling moment. Let that marinate. Let's take a look at Mary. The angel tells a teenage girl she's going to carry the Son of God. Does she know how she's going to explain it to the people? No. Does she know what Joseph is going to do? No. Does she know what her village is going to say? No. She says, let it be unto me. And she moves. The calling didn't get revealed in detail before she said yes. It got revealed because she said yes. Do you see that? The same pattern every single time. Now, God doesn't show you the whole map. He shows you the next step and the step after and the step after and the step after that. So if you're waiting for the full picture, I hate to inform you, but the scripture is pretty clear. Maybe that picture isn't coming. Now, God isn't withholding information from you. What he's doing is he's inviting you into a relationship. And that relationship does not run on certainty. They run on trust. So, if you're going through a season where God seems quiet, there's a real possibility he's already shown you the next step. You just don't want to take it because that step after that isn't visible yet. So, what does it actually look like to live by taking action before embracing any certainty? Well, a few things change from your current state. When you take action, here are some things to kind of model what that looks like for you. Your decisions get smaller. That's number one. Your decisions get smaller. You stop waiting for the big revelation. You start asking a different question. What's the next step that's already in front of me? Not the 5-year plan, just the next step. The book my friend needed wasn't part of a 5-year plan. I heard him tell his story and the next step appeared to me. I took it. The rest revealed itself in the walking. The next way that you can kind of detect it and model it is your calling gets expressed through action. When I told my friend he was going to write a book, I already knew. I already knew what my calling was. I'd been walking in it for years. And that was to be a support to other people's gifts. I'm the Scottie Pippen to your Michael Jordan, right? I'm the one who helps you become who you were meant to be. That's my calling. My skill set of writing, ghostwriting, was not my calling. Ghostwriting was my skill. Now, those are two different things that most high achievers confuse. So don't make that easy mistake. The third model is your skill is what you can do. Your calling is who you do it for and why. The book wasn't where I discovered my calling. The book was where my calling showed up to do its work. And here's what I want you to hear, because this is the part most teaching get wrong. You probably already know your calling, at least a tiny shape of it. The thing you keep coming back to, the kind of person you keep helping, the kind of room you feel most alive in. That might be your calling. But your problem isn't discovering that. Your problem is recognizing the moments where it's supposed to show up and you being willing to act when those opportunities appear. The fourth way that you can kind of see this in action in real life is you stop asking, what is my calling? And you start asking, who is in front of me right now? You see, that's the major shift, right? It's a seismic perspective shift. Your calling isn't a thing that you discover. Your calling is a way of being, always in motion, that gets revealed through the people you serve. Every time you move on a nudge, you find out a little bit more about who you actually are. You see that? And here's the last thing, probably the most important part. Your calling is not a noun, people. Your calling is a verb. It's an action word. Scripture doesn't say you have a calling. It says you are called. The word is active. You are not looking for a thing called calling. You're answering a voice that's already calling you. And the only way to answer is pick up and go. So let me leave you with this. If you're a high achieving Christian or a leader and you've been waiting for your calling, or you're still trying to search for it, and you're hoping to get this feeling of certainty before you take action, I have to say the wait is not your fault. But unfortunately, the wait is also not your faith. That wait is fear disguised in a Christian costume. So here's what I want to do before you shut this video down. I want you to think about a small move that you've been putting off. You know, the one that you keep almost making and talking yourself out of. The one that doesn't feel big enough to be a calling. Well, maybe that's exactly why it might actually be the calling. A calling rarely announces itself. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of that one small move, drop it in the comments, tell it to us. That one thing, right? That feel it. I want you to drop it in the comments, and then I'll pray for you. I read all the comments, and I want you to see how many other people are sitting on the exact same nudge as you. If this hits you, please subscribe and share. I'm building this channel for high achieving Christians who are tired of waiting for certainty and ready to actually move. I am Pene, Faleulu Ropati, and the next time God taps you on the shoulder, don't ask him for a map. Just walk. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.